Welcome to the YouTube channel Bookworm. Today, we will listen to a brief retelling of the following book, The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. The story is told from the perspective of Death, an immortal masculine being. Prologue, mountain range made of broken stone. The duty of Death is to carry the souls of the dead to the conveyor of eternity, not paying attention to the living. But Death broke the rule and began to follow the girl, whom he called a book thief. He met her 3 times. The first time, when the girl's brother died, the second, when he came for the soul of the crashed pilot, and the third, after the bombing. It was then, on a ridge of broken stone, that the book thief lost the book she was writing about herself. Death saved her and undertook to tell the girl's story. Gravedigger's instructions. Germany, January 1939. The woman was carrying her son and daughter to foster parents. The woman's husband, who disappeared without a trace, was connected with the communists, and she gave the children to strangers in order to hide them from the fascist authorities. On the way, the boy died of a pulmonary hemorrhage. He was buried near an unnamed station. One of the gravediggers lost a book. The girl, Liesel Meminger, picked it up and became a book thief. An official from the state guardianship took Liesel to the town of Mulking on Himmelstrasse, Sky Street, and gave her to her foster parents, Rosa and Hans Huberman. Rosa was short, stout, and perpetually foul-mouthed. She washed clothes for the wealthy of Mulching. The very tall Hans worked as a painter, and in the evenings played the accordion in taverns. The Hubermans had already raised their son and daughter, and were now taking in foster children for a small allowance. The foster parents told Liesel to call them Mom and Dad. The girl was afraid of her mother, although she loved her in her own way, but she immediately became attached to Papa. At night, the girl dreamed of her dead brother, and kind, calm Hans saved her from nightmares. Non-abandonment is a manifestation of trust and love, often recognized by children. Enrolling in school, 9-year-old Liesel ended up in a class with kids, as she could not read and write. One night, Liesel had another nightmare and wet the bed. When the Pope helped her change the sheets, a gravedigger's book fell out from under the mattress, a memory of her mother and brother. Liesel learned that the book was called Gravedigger's Instructions and told how to properly bury people. After seeing the book, Hans decided to help Liesel learn to read. At first, they wrote letters on the back of sandpaper at night. Then, in the evenings in the basement, paint on the walls. Next door to the Hubermans was Rudy Steiner, a boy from a large tailor family who was obsessed with Black American sportsman Jesse Owens. One day, Rudy got covered in coal and one night came to the local stadium to run 100 meters. When Liesel was transferred to a peer class, Rudy became her best friend. Unlike other boys, Rudy liked girls, especially Liesel, and he undertook to take care of her. Worse than a boy who hates you, only one thing is a boy who loves you. Liesel vowed that she would never kiss the yellow-haired and ugly Rudy in her life. Throughout the summer, Liesel learned to read, but she did not do well, and at school she was considered stupid. In the fall, World War II began, and Liesel failed her reading test. After the lesson, the children began to mock her, and the girl beat up 2 boys, for which she received the title of Schoolyard Heavyweight Champion. Shoulder shrug. The Hubermans could barely make ends meet. The rich, one by one, refused the services of Mama. Rose told Liesel to collect and deliver the laundry alone, hoping that the girl's pallor and thinness would pity the customers. In mid-January 1940, Liesel's class was learning how to write letters, and the girl decided to write to her real mother. She wrote several letters and took underwear money without asking to send it through the welfare lady, for which Rose beat her with a wooden spoon. Liesel never received a reply. From the overheard conversation of the Hubermans, the girl learned that her mother had been taken away by they. April 20, 1940 was Hitler's birthday. In Mulching, a huge fire was made from old things and harmful books. On this day, Hans quarreled with his son. Huberman was not a supporter of Hitler and was not a member of the party, for which he was reproached by his fascist son. It is clear to everyone that there is no need to paint over the dirty words written on the facades of Jewish shops. Such behavior harms Germany and harms the apostate himself. Calling his father a coward and expressing dissatisfaction with the fact that Liesel is reading some kind of nonsense instead of Hitler's book, My Struggle, the son left. Death reported that 2 years later he died in the Battle of Stalingrad. In the evening, when the fire in the square burned out, Liesel, who was passing by with the Pope, saw several surviving books in its red-hot depth. Having seized the moment, she hid one of them, shrugged, under her clothes and suddenly noticed that Frau Hermann, the half-mad wife of the governor, with whom Rose washed clothes, was watching her. My Struggle. The smoldering book burned her skin, so Liesel pulled it out as soon as she and Papa moved away from the fire. The act of the girl and the last words of the son helped Hans solve the dilemma that had tormented him for a year. At the local branch of the fascist party, he traded Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf for tobacco and left, thinking about postage. Liesel lived in fear of Frau Ilse Hermann, but she still had to take her underwear from her. Paranoia at 11 is rampant. Forgiveness at 11 is intoxicating. One day, Frau Hermann invited her into the house and took her to a room full of books. Liesel had no idea that such a room could exist. Further, Death spoke about the Jew Max Vandenberg, who hid in a dark closet for a long time and severely starved. Finally, a friend, Walter Kugler, brought him the book, My Struggle, in which he put fake documents, a map of the area, and a key, and named the name, Hans Huberman. Max got on the train and went to Mulching. On the way, he, like a shield, was obscured by the Führer's book. Summer has come. At night, Liesel read the shoulder shrug, and during the day, books from the Burgomaster's library. The girl accidentally found out that Frau Hermann became broken and half-crazy because of the death of her only son. Liesel and Rudy have taken in garden robbers led by 15-year-old Arthur Berg. Things went well, but friends could not bring their share home and ate everything themselves. At the end of the summer, Arthur moved to Cologne. Death saw him there with his dead sister in his arms. On a November night, Max unlocked the door of the Himmelstrasse house with his key. Dependent person. While fighting in the First World War, Hans met Erich Vandenberg, who taught him how to play the accordion. Before the next battle, the sergeant was looking for people with neat handwriting. Erich stated that Hans's handwriting was impeccable, and he wrote letters while the platoon was dying. So Erich saved Huberman's life. After the war, Hans visited Vandenberg's widow and learned that he had a son, Max. The widow gave Hans Erich's accordion, and Huberman left the woman his address. When Hitler came to power in 1933, Hans did not join the fascist party because a Jew had saved his life. In 1937, Hans gave in and applied to join the party, and the next day painted over a yellow star on the door of a Jewish acquaintance. The statement was at the end of a long line, but it was still there, and Hans was not taken away, like many other dissenters. In 1939, Hans was found by Walter Kugler and asked to help Max. Huberman did not refuse and exchanged the Führer's book for tobacco. Unlike most Jews, patient and resigned, Max was a fighter. After Erich's death, Max's mother moved in with his brother. Constant fights with 9 cousins became a good school for Max. On November 9, 1938, the largest Jewish pogrom took place, Kristallnacht. The mother persuaded Max to run away and gave him Huberman's address. Max began to consider himself a traitor and a deserter. For 2 years, Walter hid Max in the pantry, and this broke the 24-year-old guy. The Hubermans hid Max in the basement. Imagine what it's like to smile when you get slapped. Now imagine what it is like 24 hours a day. That's what it was to hide a Jew. Dad told Liesel his story and explained that if she told anyone about the guest, they would be taken away with Mom. but first he would burn all her books. The girl promised to be silent. A frosty winter has come. Max slept in a room by the fireplace and talked about himself in the evenings. Liesel discovered that Max was also having nightmares about his dead family. This became the basis of their friendship. For her birthday, Dad gave the girl a book. Max could not give anything, but Liesel hugged him, and it became a gift for a Jew. He painted the pages of the Führer's book with white paint and made a book called The Hanging Man out of them for Liesel. It was a series of drawings illustrating Max's acquaintance with the girl. Whistler. At the end of May, Max returned to the basement and did gymnastics. He did push-ups, squats. Sometimes he turned off the lamp and imagined himself in the boxing ring with Hitler. At first, he endured the Führer's beatings, but then he began to win, and then the entire German people attacked him. Max told Liesel that he was waiting for the Führer, so he began to train. When German troops invaded Russia, the burgomaster urged the inhabitants of Mulching to prepare for possible difficult times, and he himself refused the services of Rosa. In parting, Frau Hermann gave Liesel her favorite book, The Whistler. The girl took it, but then she thought that the burgomaster was a rare bastard. Despite the difficult times, he refused to work for the poor family. Liesel threw the book at Frau Hermann's feet and was rude to her. The apples are ripe, the time of thefts has come. Victor Hemmel became the leader of the gang. He had wind in his hair and mist in his eyes, and he was the kind of juvenile delinquent who had no other reason to steal than that he liked it. Victor was a sadist and supporter of Hitler. The year turned out to be lean, and on the first day, friends received one small apple for two. Rudy tried to protest, but Victor strangled him and then sent him away. Leaving, the boy spat bloody saliva on his boot and acquired an enemy. Rudy also had another enemy, the leader of the fascist youth organization Hitler Youth, the sadist Franz Deutscher. At the end of the summer, Liesel offered to climb into the burgomaster's house. She knew that the window in the library was always open. Frau Hermann punished herself with the cold for not saving her son. The ever-hungry Rudy was interested in food. The book thief only wanted the Whistler book, and she got it. Rudy stopped going to the Hitler Youth. It was only the opportunity to change the squad that brought him back to the organization. In early December, Liesel and Rudy were captured by Victor Hemmel. In the hands of the girl was Whistler. Victor grabbed the book from her and threw it into the river. Rudy fished Whistler out of the cold water, hoping for a kiss, but never got one. Dream postman. Throughout 1942, death worked hard, and the war came closer and closer to Mulching. In winter, 13-year-old Liesel brought snow into the basement so that Max could make a snowman, which made him sick and spent many weeks between life and death. Liesel blamed herself and tried to help Max. She brought him gifts, a dried sheet, a button, a candy wrapper, and spent hours reading the Whistler aloud. One day death came to Max, but the Jewish fighter rebuffed him. Death rejoiced and retreated. The whistle is over. Liesel needed a new book and got it from Frau Hermann's library. The book was called The Postman of Dreams, and Liesel continued to read aloud to Max, while her parents thought about where to put his body in case of death. A Jewish corpse is a big nuisance. But Max survived and returned to the basement in mid-April. In the spring, party members began to go around the houses and look for basements suitable for bomb shelters. Liesel noticed them when she was playing football. She deliberately hurt her knee to call the Pope and warn him without arousing suspicion. Max managed to hide in his shelter under the stairs. Duden's Complete Dictionary and Thesaurus. Hans Huberman got a job. He repainted the blinds black. For the poor, Hans worked for a cup of tea or half a cigarette. While Liesel was helping Papa, Rudy was training. In mid-August, the Hitler Youth was holding a sports festival, and the boy wanted to win 4 running competitions and wipe Franz Deutscher's nose. Rudy won 3 medals, but in the 100 meters, he made sure that he was disqualified for breaking the rules. He didn't have the strength to run, and he didn't want to lose. The counterfeit gold medals were given to Rudy by Liesel. The boy was recognized as an outstanding athlete. At the end of August, the book thief stole a new book from Frau Hermann. A week later, Rudy took her to the burgomaster's house and showed her a book leaning against the library window. It was either a challenge or a trap. Liesel took a chance and obtained a book, Duden's complete dictionary and Thesaurus, and in it, a letter from Frau Hermann. She knew that the girl was stealing books. She was glad about this and hoped that someday Liesel would enter her library through the door. The bombardments began. The Hubermans hid in the neighbor's basement, leaving Max alone. Once during a raid, in order to prevent panic, Liesel began to read aloud the Whistler she had taken with her, and people calmed down. Hearing about this, Max conceived a new series of drawings called The Word Shaker. The next day, Frau Holzapfel appeared at the Hubermans, who had been at enmity with Mama for many years, and spat on the door of the house as she passed by. She wanted Liesel to read to her twice a week for coffee cards, and Rose agreed. 2 weeks later, a column of Jews passed through Mulching. They went to Dachau to concentrate. The Pope gave a piece of bread to the old Jewish man, and both were beaten with a whip. Now the parents were waiting for the Gestapo to take them away. Because of this, Max had to leave the Hubermans. Hans was never taken away, and he was tormented by the conscience that a Jew might suffer because of him. Word Shaker. Instead of Huberman, they came for Rudy. The Nazis wanted to take him to a special school where the perfect breed of people was bred, but Alex Steiner did not give up his son. Although Rudy was afraid for his father, he still wanted to go to this school, but did not dare. The punishment soon followed. Hans Huberman was hastily accepted into the party, and then he and Alex Steiner were sent to the front. When they come to you and ask you to give one of the children, you must answer yes. Tailor Alex Steiner ended up in a hospital near Vienna, where he repaired soldiers' uniforms. Hans was sent to the LSE, a passive air defense unit whose soldiers extinguished fires and rescued people from the rubble after air raids. Reading was Liesel's only pastime for Frau Holzapfel. Columns of Jews passed through Mulching several times, and the girl looked for Max among them. One day, Rudy and Liesel scattered bread in the path of the column. Exhausted prisoners began to lift it. The guards noticed the children, and they barely escaped. After another raid, during which Liesel comforted people by reading, Mom gave her a book of Max's drawings. There was a fairy tale about a Führer who wanted to conquer the world with bad words. He was thwarted by a girl, the Word Shaker, who planted and nurtured a tree with good words. The Last Human Alien. Climbing into Frau Hermann's library after Christmas for another book, Liesel found a dish of biscuits on the table. She took the book, The Last Human Stranger, and thanked the burgomaster's wife, who at that moment entered the room. Liesel shared the biscuits with Rudy, and Frau Hermann returned the plate by ringing the front door. The truck in which the Hans squad was transported had an accident. Huberman broke his leg, and he was sent home. Liesel received this good news a week after her 14th birthday. Soon a plane crashed near Mulching. Everyone ran to look at the dead pilot. Death saw and recognized Liesel, and the girl felt him near her. The human heart is a line, while mine is a circle, and I can infinitely manage to get to the right place at the right moment. In early April 1943, Hans returned home. He was given a week's leave and paperwork at the military office in Munich. Book thief. Hitler stubbornly sowed war and exterminated the Jewish infection. One day, in a column of Jews going through Mulching, Liesel saw Max. The girl joined the crowd of prisoners and walked beside them. They drove her, dragged her away, and then, together with Max, they whipped her. For 3 days, Liesel lay in bed, and on the 4th day, she took Rudy to the forest, talked about Max, and showed the Word Shaker. She wanted him to take her hand and pull her towards him. No matter where, on the lips, on the neck, on the cheek. All her skin was empty for him, waiting for him. But Rudy didn't dare. In mid-August, Liesel went to Frau Hermann for a new book, but she thought that the words that Hitler so cleverly controlled were to blame for everything and tore it up. Then the girl wrote to Frau Hermann why she would not come again. Frau Hermann herself came to the Hubermans and presented Liesel with a book without words. She read the letter and decided that the girl herself could fill it with words. Since then, Liesel has been sitting in the basement at night and writing the story The Book Thief on lined pages. During the air raid, which was not warned by sirens and radio, Liesel also sat in the basement, so she remained alive. All of Himmelstrasse died before they could wake up, and death took their souls. Liesel was rescued by people from the LSE. She kissed Rudy for the first and last time, put the accordion next to Papa, and sat there for a long time, holding Mama's hand. The book that saved Liesel's life went to death. Epilogue. Last paint. Liesel was taken in by Ilse Hermann. After the funeral, Alex Steiner returned to Mulching, regretting that he had not given Rudy to a special school. After the war, he opened his workshop. Liesel helped him. There, in October 1945, Max found her. Liesel lived a long life and died in suburban Sydney, leaving her husband, 3 children and grandchildren. Coming for Liesel, death gave her the book thief. The words in the book were almost erased from time and roads.